When I was growing up, my family, everyone I knew was Catholic. But around the age of about 7 years old, my mom actually left the church. So my formative years, I was raised Protestant, so I really didn't know much about my faith until I met my husband, Ryan. Hi, my name is Kelly Breaux, president and co-founder of Red Bird Ministries.
Hello, I'm Ryan Breaux, the co-founder of Red Bird Ministries. My wife and I started the ministry 5 years ago. We went through 10 years of darkness, and we suffered a lot and live our faith because we were so wrapped up in grief after suffering the loss of twins. We started this ministry to help those families who are suffering the grief of losing their child. This would give people some kind of hope, look for after such a tragic loss.
Red Bird Ministries is a Catholic nonprofit. We support families of child loss. A family of child loss can lose a child from in the womb all the way through adulthood. We are a peer-led ministry, and so our leaders are all families of loss, and we partner with professionals in the community to provide a more holistic approach to healing that we see that families need and deserve. 1999, I met Ryan, and I was 19 years old. And I remember when we were just having these general conversations, while we were dating and getting to know each other about our faith. When I told him that, my mom had raised me Protestant, but I was, born Catholic and baptized and, made my first communion. It was like, I told him, I was like, you've always taken an ownership to how our family was going to be raised. We did get married in the Catholic Church. It was a beautiful day in 2002. I was 22 years old, Ryan was 26. And we quickly wanted to raise our family. But there were still things about my faith that I really didn't know because, at 7 years old, you don't really, up until that point, you really didn't know a lot about my faith when my mom left the church. So I started to slowly learn about things.
We lived together before, which is not of Catholic faith. Once we got married, we started going to church as a family, started trying to have kids right away. We found ourselves pregnant after probably 3.5 years, 4 years. We were faced with some toughness, and that's when my faith was really challenged. Kelly was very upset with God. I was very hurt and upset.
In 2005, we delivered a set of twins early at 28 weeks. And that is what changed our life. Our son Talon died at 15 days old, and our daughter Emma Grace died 4 years later in 2009. We were plunged into an abyss of suffering that we did not know how to handle. I was really struggling with my faith after we lost Talon, but I still could pray. But after we lost Emma, I didn't truly understand why this was happening. It felt like a punishment. I didn't know if God was good anymore. I was having a lot of anxiety, depression, and so it devastated my faith life.
As a young boy, I didn't have a good role model, to show me how to be a man of faith and to be the man of my household. What that did to our relationship after losing our kids. As a man, I should have stood up and said, no, this is what we need, we need to do. We need to go to church or go to adoration, or that would help us as a family, as a couple, grieve together. But what I did, I held all my faith inside of me, and it was all private. I never alluded to Kelly my grief, and that put a wedge between Kelly and I.
We spent about 4 years away from the church, and At the time, I don't think it even was like just like a rebellion against my faith. I think it was just because grief like really brings you to a place where all you want to do is isolate from the world. And I think that was part of it. I got thrust into this place of desolation.
That's what got between our marriage. That's what caused the fights, the grief of the wedge that was put between our marriage.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to talk to each other. We didn't know how to love each other.
During this time that I was drinking, it came to a head that this was not working. What Ryan and I were doing to manage our emotions, because it had caused so much animosity in our marriage. And more than anything, we loved one another. That wasn't we wanted to happen, but something had to change. But in 2014, our daughter, we had another child in between there. Our daughter Estelle began school. And so we registered her for the little Catholic school in our area. And that's basically how we came back into the church, very, very, very slowly. She would ask me to go to Mass, so I'd go to Mass with her on Thursday. So I stepped foot back into the church. In 2016, I had a friend who her daughter was involved in a car accident. And because I had experienced this before twice, I thought that I could help her. But there was something very distinct and clear about what was happening with her that was something different than me. Where she was standing at the foot of the cross with the Blessed Virgin Mary, I ran away from the cross. I didn't want anything to do with it. So she showed me something different. Like grief could involve our faith and that you could connect with God through suffering. So the first time that I was invited back to my faith by someone who had experienced what I had experienced was my friend Misty. She invited me to make my Crescio. So Crescio is a 3-day walk with the Holy Spirit where it's infused with sacraments and a chance to come back into full communion with God. And during that weekend, there was opportunities, of course, to go to confession, and I did. That's whenever I met Jesus face-to-face in adoration that Saturday night, and he healed me. But I still didn't really understand what had happened. I didn't know there was theology into the sacraments healing. I didn't know any of this. I had experienced it firsthand. And I think that was probably the way that God spoke to me the most, because it wasn't just, I learned about healing. I actually experienced it without the knowledge. After confirmation, things started really changing for me. So this profound experience of like the Holy Spirit being, living in me, started to develop, and my life started to change. My life changed at that moment, but my circumstances were still the same. I still was a mother of loss. This still had happened to our family, but there was an emotional and a physical, definitely a physical feeling that I left there changed. When we left Crescio, one of the things that Father Ted had told us is, now you're apostle of Christ. Now you have to go and you have to, share with everyone what God has done for you. And Crescio really taught me to be an apostle and to go into the world and to help the church to know Christ.
Yeah, she was a different woman. She walked in. The first thing she told me is that I'm sorry for being so mean to you all these years. I learned a lot this weekend, and I think you need to make your Crescio. So fast forward another year probably, I made my Crescio. Came back and Kelly was as you make your Cursillo, they tell you need to go out and do stuff, be apostolic. And Kelly said, I think God's calling us to do youth ministry. And
I could clearly see during that year that when we would really make an impact is when we would share our story with our parents. So there was times during that year where we were able to share our witness in what God had done with us, and it directly involved losing our children.
And she came back and said, I don't think that's what we called to. We had friends that would tell us, hey, I think y'all need to do a grief ministry because of y'all's story, what we've been through, and the struggles, where we were at one time and where we arrived to, the next chapter of our life.
It happened one day. I was in adoration, and I was walking out the door. When I was putting my hand on one side, my friend was putting the hand on the other side, and I opened it, and I said, stop, and I walked back out with her. And my friend's name's Courtney. And I said, I think God wants me to start a grief ministry. And she said, yes, you should do that. And she's like, that is a great idea. And I was like, I don't even know where to start. She's like, you need to go to the diocese. You need to go talk to someone over there. So that's kind of how it would happen. I went to the diocese. I met with Father Halpin. He's a psychologist as well as he is a priest. And I told Father Halpin, I think God's asking us to serve and to share our stories. One of the things that we knew had to be a big component of it was helping the couple be able to learn how to love one another through their loss afterwards to prevent further trauma from happening, because a lot of the families after a loss will divorce. So one of his concerns was not knowing how we would be able to put this and form this together just because men and women grieve so differently. I told him, I said, that's the problem, Father, is that people don't know how to grieve together. And so they go on this journey of their own healing and they separate. Like their grief forms a wedge and they're on their own journey instead of carrying this cross together.
So I was more convicted about maybe entertaining that idea. We think y'all need to do this. So when Kelly came to me and said, I think this is what God has called us to do, that's what happened.
In 2018, my husband Ryan and I founded Red Bird Ministries. So we decided to call Red Bird Ministries because there's a local singer in our area. It's a group of women actually called Sweet Cecilia. They wrote a song called Red Bird Flies. And in the song, she talks about 5 people that were influential in her life and made a difference. And every time she saw a cardinal, a redbird fly, that she would think of them. Cardinals have always been associated with grief. Every time, anytime you see like any type of bereavement, you usually see a redbird. And so we named it Red Bird Ministries after the song Red Bird Flies. The first thing that we started offering in our diocese was this couples workshop where we taught couples how to communicate through their loss. But after that first workshop, I saw a very profound encounter with these families and how literally in one day they would come into this space almost hunched back with this very darkness that would surround them, no glimmer of hope in their life. And through one day, God re-sparked this hope into their eyes, and they left, most of them, smiling. And I knew that this was something bigger than us. I know it's nothing Ryan and I do, but I think it's our openness to sitting in suffering with people, and that God can really show up and heal these people.
My name is Michelle Leblon. I became involved with Red Bird about 5.5 years ago when my son Griffin passed away suddenly in a tragic jet ski accident. Red Bird was something that came really as a godsend because I was lost, and I felt like Red Bird found me there. When I lost Griffin, I lost a piece of me. I feel like there's nothing there, and so I start to walk a little crooked. And then all I have to do at that point is reach out to my Red Bird sisters or my Red Bird family, and I feel it start to fill again, and I can straighten up again and continue to walk that path towards healing. Something that could get me through my grief. There are all kinds of counseling options that are out there, but something that was faith-based, because my faith was important to me, and it was important to me to include that in my grief process and my healing process.
Red Bird Ministries accompanies ordinary families who have been given an extraordinary cross. So we walk with families from pregnancy loss all the way through adulthood. We see ourselves as partners with the church so that we can have a universal approach to child loss.
You see so many others that are also grieving and are also sad, but that their faith is so present and it's so resounding, even in their grief. And Red Bird helps me remember that, to see these people who are still so filled with faith, but also still on that journey, I feel like is only possible because of Red Bird.
I do support her any way that I can. We do workshops, one-day workshops. We do dad's retreats. Sometimes we'll have to go on trips to give our witness to others in different dioceses around the country.
Each one of us, if it's not the loss of a child, it's going to be some sort of cross that we are called to carry. And whatever that cross may be, you have the opportunity to be able to do that with the love of God. And being at that soiree, seeing Ryan and Kelly and how they interacted and all the other families that Red Bird had helped, no more of the unknowing of why God had done this to us, but the opportunity to pick up this cross and say, I will be this family that has experienced this grief, but it will be for your glory.
For our workshops, our one-day workshops, so you see them coming in and they're worried about being there that day. As the day goes on, you just see those relationships starting to spark between the couples, you know. At the end of the day, you can just see a smile and look like weight lifted off of their shoulders. Because as men, you know, growing up, we were taught to if you fall on it, fall down, because men don't cry. You know, through our workshops, we've seen men realize that it is all right to cry. It is all right to show your feelings, especially to your wife, if you are grieving, ultimately grieving from the loss of their child. It's not just the mom or the dad's child, it's their child together. It's better to grieve together than separate.
We came up with 3 key things that we thought that would change the way that the church looked at loss and how that would change the world. A Good Shepherd program, so teaching our priests on how child loss can destroy a family and ways that they can help them. So giving them basically the education, the formation, an emergency kit, and then we're gonna get you to the expert. And so that's how we feel like our priests and our deacons, they're first responders when a tragedy happens in a parish. And then the next program we thought about was a digital component. So if the struggle is that people don't know who they can trust, they don't really feel comfortable maybe sitting with people right after a loss, how can we bring support directly to them? So we developed an app. Third component was a grief journey. So once they're rehabbed and their support in a parish, how can they journey through their suffering and address the human, but also how can we get to the saint? So that's a progressional type of component.
December 2017, my wife and I lost our 6-month-old baby boy, Leo. It's ministries like Red Bird that helped provide us the support that we needed for the grief that we were feeling. There were obviously new feelings that we've never felt before. So they helped us to cope with his death and just get through the whole situation in ways that other people weren't able to focus on the specific needs that we needed. And as we began to develop our relationship with them, we've learned of their ministry and how they function and the other services that they provide, counseling to others on how to minister to those that are going through great grief. Red Bird Ministries was able to be there, be our Simon, be our Veronica in our times of need.
If we're serving the families in our community, then most specifically, we can share this with the church. And that's how it kind of just, the idea started to manifest itself very slowly.
With the separation of marriages, child loss is a big proponent of that because it starts with the child loss. But then all these old wounds come into play, moving down through the grief of their loss. The wedge that it built between us, it just snowballed because other things, small things would turn into large things because of the grief. So could be, I left something out on the counter or, didn't do the clothes, the dishes. Instead of Kelly having compassion for me, she was upset with me. A lot of the times it would start arguments, we would start fusses. Behind it all was our grief. That was the nail in the coffin that was driving us to fussing and to fighting, and we just didn't know that. We didn't know it, we didn't see it. I know that this ministry we can witness, we can tell our story, and hopefully help those who are going through the same processes and that we were going through, Kelly and I, at the time.
This was like the church responding and really taking off. That's whenever diocese started reaching out to us, whereas before, the families were reaching out to us more. So this kind of elevated our ministry as a potential partner with a diocese and parish. It elevated that.
Because it also helps me to heal as I visit with other mothers or fathers or families of loss, to walk that with them, to cry the tears with them, just to sit with them and listen to them and reassure them that their child is with our Lord. And they have so much comfort from God, so much comfort from Mother Mary, so much comfort from the saints. It can be a beautiful healing. Not only the opportunity to help others to heal, but the friendships and the sisterhood and the flock and the community that is there, that is the Red Bird family, is so important to me. It's basically one of those things that through so many huge changes that have gone on in my life over the past 5 years.
Digital component of serving families is very important, but we know that's not how we recollect back to God. We recollect in reconciliation, eyelash to eyelash, person to person. So the in-person support groups are super important for us too as well, so that families can, when a loss happens, they're not just going to an app, they're not just going to see someone across a computer screen. They actually have support in their communities. So one of the things that we do for our diocese and our parishes is we partner with them and we identify leaders in the community and we train them on how to start in-person support in their diocese. We talk about potential partners with our spiritual directors and our Catholic clinicians in their area so that they can form a team so that families can holistically heal.
Can remember right after we lost our son Leo, in a very real sense, feeling like I was drowning, being literally held underwater. And I just felt like I couldn't breathe for a very long time. And I know that that is how a lot of parents of loss feel. And when you encounter somebody who it's now been a few years, and you can look at them and say, okay, they did it. They got to maybe not necessarily the other side of grief, but they're on a different stone, right? If you think of like a walking path where it still hurts, it will never not, but you can get up in the morning and you can endure each day. So when you have a community of people like Red Bird has established in so many states and now in so many countries, those people who that hurt is so raw and it's so fresh, they then have an opportunity to encounter people like Kelly, and you see that joy comes back.
We started our training in 2021 with our first chapter outside of our diocese, which was in St. Augustine, Florida. And it's grown since then. So we have chapters and flocks in 15 different states, as well as 3 international groups in Belize, in England, Christchurch, New Zealand, and Nigeria.
So our hope and expectation for our ministry is to continue to help families of loss. Just give them hope. There's not always the valleys of grief, that they'll have somewhere to turn, have someone to talk to. Hear those fathers and mothers speaking of the grief that they went through. Our ultimate goal is, to get this ministry spread throughout the world, or the country, and touch as many hearts as we can.
Hello, this is Deacon Randy Hyde. He is a chaplain here at Ochsner's Lafayette General in Lafayette, Louisiana.
I guess the one thing I have to say is, for parents that lose children, reach out to us. We're here to help. There's so much we can do. Please understand, the only thing that has kept me going is to understand death does not detach me from my loved ones. They wait for me there with Christ. But please, in moments like this, reach out to us so that we can be of assistance with you.
Our future, that what we see Red Bird doing really well is strategically growing throughout the church. So when someone experiences the loss of a child, that they know that the first place to go is to the church, and that this apostolate exists to help our families to be able to heal and grieve with God, because that is the missing component in when people are searching and they're looking for support. God is the missing component out of their healing. And having a ministry that exists within a diocese gives families the opportunity to be able to experience that with Christ.
You can't always. This is the death. Remarkably empty.
Turn back towards God. Rise up.